Hey guys, welcome to your channel. We are going to discuss some important Hindu articles. I will avoid those articles which have repeatedly comes into news and where I have already discussed. So before proceed, uh, let's see some important topics for pre and mains point of view from today's Hindu newspaper. Differences between delta and estuaries, differences between eastern and western coastline, conflict between legislative intent and judicial interpretation. That means where legislature has enacted a law and where court has expressed her dissent in such conflicts, recent conflicts between legislature and judiciary. Reservation on the basis reservation for promotion means promotion on the basis of reservation. These topics are important for pre and mains point of view. One important article from today's Hindu newspaper national column is that East Coast can become a manufacturing hub. This article actually at the recent context of US restrictions embargo on Chinese trade. So article explores that whether India has a opportunity and has an opportunity of eastern coastline to exploit this situation. Till now, western coast of India is much more developed, much more engaging in trade rather than the eastern coast. Because India is much more engaging in west in terms of coastline in ocean rather than east. But here the important topic is that the comparison between eastern coastline and western coastline, why western coastline has given an vast and very favorable opportunity for trade in ocean rather than the eastern coast. Means whether we can shift from Arabia or whether we can shift or whether we can think of a shift of from Arabian Sea to Pacific Ocean in terms of trade and ocean activities throughout trade. So this is a to answer this question actually we have to first we have to first compare that what are the advantages and disadvantages of eastern coast in developing a natural harbor. This is very important because western coast gives much more benefits for developing a natural port or harbor rather than the eastern coast. Here the important thing is that the comparison between eastern coastline and western coastline. To understand this, you have to know the differences, what is delta and estuary. The main differences is that in estuary, the silt deposition is less rather than delta. Eastern coastline is much more formed delta. That is why it has much more deposition, and as a result of deposition, it has much more shallow waterline, shallow bottom line, and it is aggradational plan. That is why here the coastline in eastern coastline is much more emergent rather than the western coastline. In western coastline, it is much more estuaries. That is why deposition is less, aggradation is less, and that is why rather than emergent, it is much more submergent. That is why it is much more drowned on the water, and because that is why in eastern coast deposition is very much, and that is why the ships cannot. In eastern coastline there is much more deposition, and as a result of deposition it has much more plain and it is emergent, and this is emergent, and that is why ships find it difficulty to rest in the harbor and to depart from the harbor. Here ships have to dependent on the much more natural tide. Whenever there is a tide, only then ships can come and go, right, because of its depositional nature. But in comparison to eastern coastline, western coastline has much more benefits regarding this because it has less deposition, and that is why ships find it easy to come to the coastline and to depart from the coastline without depending on the tides. Much more, right, because its natural position, submergent natural position of the western coastline gives a fine opportunity for developing natural harbor or natural ports, right. And in that way again, the necessary terms you must have to understand is continental shelf aggradation, emergent and submergent coastline, and steep slope. This is very important. In western coastline, the slope is steep and it gives a very sharp and fine advantage for natural harbor. In eastern coastline, because of the deposition, it is not steep slope and it is much more plain. Right. In this way, you have to explore the article for pre and mains point of view, and along with that, you have to know what is dredging. Actually, dredging is a technique where actually the silt deposition. Throughout this technology, the silt deposition can be removed from the water. Throughout dredging, the silt deposition can be removed from the water and port development can be made. And in this way, using this technology, actually, there are various famous ports actually in the world, like Singapore, London has developed this kind of ports even in the depositional plane with using dredging technology. So whether India can explore such kind of technology to form a port in eastern coast, this is very important. And another important thing is that Haldia port in East Bengal is also situated in a depositional plane in India. Right, so these things are important from this article from pre and mains. Another important article is substantive equality. This article is based on the recent Supreme Court judgment regarding Karnataka government's decision to for promotion on a reservation basis from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe community. And Supreme Court orders that the state government's attempt to make promotion on a reservation basis from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe community is quite valid. Before that, the background of this judgment is not new actually. It has begun in way back in 2002 when Karnataka government attempted to make promotion on a reservation basis. It was challenged in court in 2001. In 2006, in Nagaraj's government, in 2006, Nagaraj's judgment upheld the decision of the Karnataka government for promotion on reservation basis, but Nagaraj's judgment requires says that for a much more fruitful implementation of the scheme, state government must have to avail the data needed to justify the backwardness of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe community. Means the Nagaraj judgment also supported the step of the government for promotion on a reservation basis from this community, but the court opines that there is availability of data is necessary to justify the backwardness of this community. It was again challenged in court in 2011, and in 2018, Jarnal Singh case, the court opines that in Jarnal Singh case also, court actually upheld the validity of the Karnataka government step, but it has said that the demonstration of backwardness is not necessary to make this act. Means while making reservation a ground for promotion for scheduled caste and scheduled type community, there is no need to demonstrate the backwardness of this community. This is a very important judgment, but the other two valid requirements are there must be a set of data showing the inadequate representation of the community in government services and as well as efficacy on administration. These two parameters have to be decided, have to be verified while making reservation a basis for promotion for scheduled tribe and scheduled caste communities. Here the third thing is very important for public administration as well as ethics purposes, that efficacy on administration, whether reservation have any impact on efficacy on administration, whether reservation on the basis of promotion will invite inefficiency on administration. These things are very important. So it is clear till now that what is Nagaraj, what is Jarnal Singh judgment opines. The important thing is that both the two judgments upholds the validity of the government's decision to make promotion on the basis of reservation for schedule type and schedule caste communities. But Nagraj opines that judgment opines that data should be necessary to justify the backwardness of schedule type and schedule caste. But Journal Singh case says that there is no need to demonstrate the backwardness of these communities, but there should be a data showing that there is an inadequate representation of those communities in government services, and there should be special concern regarding the efficacy on administration pervaded by such kind of reservation on promotion basis. Again, recently, Supreme Court upheld the validity of the government's step for reservation on promotion from these communities. But the core of this judgment here has to be viewed. The core of this judgment is the historical and social perspective of reservation. This judgment actually gives importance on historical and social perspective of reservation, and thereby denying the importance of demonstrating the backwardness of the community again. Means the court again it upholds the core principles of this Journal Singh case, where demonstration was not necessary to justify the backwardness. And the same judgment also, this recent judgment also upholds the same principle, that there is no need to demonstrate the backwardness, that historical and social perspective of reservation is enough to justify this. And another thing is that this another core of the principle of the judgment is that quotas does not affect administration by themselves. This is also very important. What does this mean? You have to try to explore it. That quotas does not affect administration by themselves. Means the intent of the quotas is not anyhow to harm the efficacy of administration. Here you have to connect the two words, historical and social perspective of reservation. This is very important. And quotas does not affect administration by themselves. And some other derivative terms here, derivative questions that we can gather from the article is that legislative intent and judicial interpretation. This means where legislature has enacted a law and which derives controversy, and eventually which have acquired assent or dissent from the judiciary. Means a tension between legislature and judiciary in terms of enacting a particular law. For example, this act, reservation on a promotion on the basis of reservation, as per the controversy, this has breached the Article 14 and 16 of the Indian Constitution. So you might find a question in mains. So whether the recent Supreme Court judgment, where it is upheld the basis of promotion on the basis of reservation, invites or breach the principle of Article 14 and 16, means does promotion on the basis of reservation breach the natural justice inherent in the Article 14 and 16 of the Indian Constitution? You might find this type of questions. One another important article is of shell companies and GDP. This is important for also pre-point of view. What is shell company? What is MCA 21 data? It relates with the controversy of regarding MCA 21 data and its estimate for GDP, right? What impacts it has brought to the estimation of GDP. Try to find out yourself. If you find difficulty, and you can put your difficulty in comment box, I'll try to contact with you. Deal in danger. This is actually recently Iran's threat to withdraw from the civil nuclear agreement. And it shows the advantages and disadvantages, what allies Iran might gain, or what foes, and how it will impact the relationship between Iran and other 5 countries who have signed the deal. I have already discussed in it my earlier Hindu newspaper guidelines, so I will not explore it in details today. So these are the today's Hindu newspaper article, which I have tried to give you guidelines. So hope you will find benefit throughout these guidelines, and you will prepare your own notes.